So what is a tutor? A tutor is a peer, is both a teacher and a learner, works in a structured and supervised educational context, works with a student to help them achieve academically, and provides students with the tools necessary to succeed independently. Now you may want to know, what's the difference between a professor and a tutor? A professor is one person teaching an entire class, teaches only the lesson plan, and is an expert in his or her field, while a tutor has a session that is peer-to-peer or more individualized, teaches not only material but also teaches students how to learn material, and a tutor is knowledgeable but not an expert. Now that we have defined what a tutor is and talked about the difference between professors and tutors, let's talk about the 6 goals to develop best tutoring practices. 1. Promote independent learning. 2. Personalized tutoring session. 3. Implement multiple perspectives. 4. Provide student perspective on learning. 5. Respect individual differences. And 6. Follow the job description. Number 1. Promote independent learning. The most important thing a tutor can do is prepare a student for succeeding without assistance. Always encourage your tutee to attempt to solve problems individually and talk through processes. Assist your tutee with becoming familiar with available resources such as the textbook, notes, the syllabus, and even internet searching techniques. Review listening and note-taking strategies with your tutee. Number 2, personalized tutoring sessions. Remember that each student learns differently. What works for one student may not work for all. Review different learning styles with your tutee in order to determine what teaching methods work best for them. Be mindful of other personality traits such as the tendency to procrastinate, the habit of test anxiety, shyness, and others. Discuss these items with your tutee. Number 3, implement multiple perspectives. Pay attention to what works and doesn't work for your tutee. Look at the material from different perspectives and try to see how your tutee is conceptualizing the material. Share new perspectives about learning the material with your tutee. Number 4, provide your perspective on learning as a student. You are currently taking classes and you most likely took the same course that your tutee is struggling with. Let your tutee know that you have been there. If you know what that particular professor expects, explain that to your tutee. Let your tutee know that you understand what it means to be stressed in a class and what it's like to balance school, work, and your social life. You understand what your tutee is going through, and you are here to help. Number 5, respect individual differences among students. UMSL is an extremely diverse campus. Tritons have diverse backgrounds, opinions, values, and motivations. Because everyone does not necessarily come from a culture similar to yours, at times their actions may be confusing to you. If your tutee is doing something that confuses you, it's okay to respectfully ask them about it. You may both learn from each other. And finally, number 6, follow your job description. Stay within the realm of your job description. You are not a counselor, psychiatrist, or professor. You're a tutor. If the tutee is having personal problems in their life, it is not your job to counsel them. Refer students to campus resources for assistance with problems outside of your job description. Offer to walk your tutee to the campus resources that you suggest, and if you are unsure of where to refer a student, ask your supervisor. Now, let's practice what we've learned with some scenarios. Before we get into that, take a moment to pause this video and review your campus resources handout.
The first scenario that we're going to cover talks about a non-traditional student. So Caroline is meeting with her tutee Mick for the first time. When Mick arrives to the tutoring session, Caroline notices that he is older than her father and wearing thick glasses. As the tutoring session begins, Caroline immediately picks up on the fact that Mick appears to be impatient with not only the course materials, but also with other students in the class. I'm not sure how I'm supposed to hear the professor's lecture over all the kids talking about partying and Snapchat. It's hard enough going back to school for the first time in over 30 years without all of the distractions. I feel like a fool when all of these 18-year-olds can barely pay attention and then get A's on assignments. Mick then tells Caroline that he has poor eyesight and cannot see the board in class to take notes. So how can Caroline use some of the 6 best tutoring practices goals to help Mick? Well, first, Caroline can personalize the tutoring session and acknowledge Mick's need for a distraction-free work environment by working with him in a quiet place and encouraging him to study in a library or in the tutoring center. Secondly, Caroline can respect Mick's unique differences as a non-traditional student and remind him that while it has been a while since he's been in school, he can still be successful, and using the tutoring center resources is an excellent first step for him to be successful. And lastly, Caroline can suggest that Mick speak with Disability Access Services about his eyesight. They can further help him out. Now let's cover the learning difficulty scenario. Mateo was recently hired as a chemistry tutor, and he has been tutoring Josh for a couple of sessions. Josh struggles to understand how to use all the steps of a formula to solve chemical equations, and Mateo's not noticing this gap in learning. When Josh presents an equation he is struggling to solve, Mateo will walk Josh through the steps by solving the equation himself. This method doesn't seem to be working for Josh. He is continuing to struggle and is becoming frustrated. What could Mateo do differently to help Josh understand? So one thing Mateo could do is to offer to watch Josh complete a chemical equation using a formula to see if Mateo can identify the steps in which Josh has a misconception in learning. After that, Mateo could show Josh how to work through that step to solve the equation. Another option is that Mateo could try to find videos showing different approaches to learning how to solve chemical equations and help Josh understand the variety of ways to solve the problem. This would really help personalize the tutoring session to help fit Josh's learning style. Mateo could also try to provide Josh with mnemonic devices or other learning strategies that might help him comprehend the different steps of the formula. Or Mateo could provide him with tricks or tips he learned from professors or other chemistry authorities. Lastly, if Mateo really felt he could not provide Josh with the services needed to be successful, he could refer Josh back to the tutoring center for additional help. Do not feel embarrassed if you have to ask the tutoring center for additional guidance. We are here for both you and your tutie. As you can see, there are many options to help students with learning difficulties. Let's move on to the academic dishonesty scenario. Gwen has been a writing tutor for 2 semesters. Her newest tutie, Ian, really struggles with essay writing. Ian tells Gwen that he has to write an essay about the book The Color Purple. Gwen herself had to write a paper on that book and had done particularly well on it. As a reference, Gwen decided to pull up her essay on her laptop in order to show Ian some specific examples of how to connect ideas and properly cite the book in the essay. "That's really good. How about you just write my essay for me?" Ian asked. Gwen laughed and continued to explain essay writing techniques to Ian. "No, I'm serious. Just write the essay for me and I'll pay you $20. That's more than you make over 2 hours of tutoring, and I know it'll take you just a little while to rewrite the essay you already did," Ian said. Now, how can Gwen use some of the 6 best tutoring practice goals to respond correctly to this situation? Gwen should promote independent learning by explaining to Ian how he can take her examples and use them to create his own writing rather than simply reusing what Gwen wrote. Gwen should also explain to Ian that as students, they are both held to standards of academic honesty, and either or both of them could face consequences as a result of plagiarism. Finally, it might be a good idea for Gwen to reach out to her supervisor, just to let him or her know about the situation.
Wrapping it up. In this presentation, we learned what a tutor is, discussed the differences between a tutor and a professor, went over the 6 goals to develop best tutoring practices, and applied those goals to realistic scenarios. It is a good idea to rewatch this video and take notes so that you can implement this information into your future tutoring sessions. If you have any questions at all, please reach out to your supervisor.